So far we have been looking at functions that has return value and functions that don't have return value. When we are talking about return value, we are talking about those functions that don't have any visual effect but actually have what they do or any operation that we use them in performing. So some function we have used, such as the math function, return results, but they don't output the result to the screen. We force that to happen by using the print function in Python. So return result, for lack of a better name, I call them fruitful functions. So functions that don't have any return value, they are called null function, whereas those that have a return value are called fruitful functions. So other function like print twice that we used earlier do not have any return value, so they are called void function. But those that have return value are called fruitful function. As you can see here, we have used several functions in our math module, such as math.py, where we don't have any return value. Here I can just create a new file to check that out. I can just say func that has return. So I can just say .py. Then inside this I import my math module. Then after import statement I can just say math.py and save my file. I try to call this file by saying Python. Then the name of the file, which is func with the return. So I just press enter. Nothing is being outputted to the screen because actually I'm not trying to print out anything to the screen, but I can force that to happen by using the print function. I can say print what I have to be my math.py, then I close it with closing parentheses, then I save my file. I come down yet again to run the program. Then it's now returning the value that is being returned by math.py function, which is not being printed to the screen before. But when we are working with our command line, I can just say okay, import. I'm now in my interpreter. I can say import math. Then on the next line I can just say math.py. Then this should return the value because I'm interacting with my interpreter currently. So this is a return value. In my Python interpreter, I will see an output, but this output is not being printed to the screen, but it is being returned, and the interpreter enable me to see the result. So we have been working with things like that when we are working with these functions that we use in converting the variable type or the type of a variable, such as int, string, float, and so on. We have been working with those functions that only return value, which are fruitful function. We can also have this should be what, mass the square root of 5, then the answer plus 1, then the final answer divided by 2 should be golden. So we can have all this kind of function to work without printing anything to the screen, but only returning a value which can be used in any other computation. But so far so good. Let's look at our previous file here, where I have I think it is here. I have um my integer function, which is used to convert num to an integer. Then I print that out to the screen. But let's see something here. Let's work with something realistic here. I comment out this line of code, then I move to the next line. Let's work with something realistic here. If I have an operation to do actually, then I can say okay, I want to say print out let's say 5, but here I'm going to be putting my 5 in quotes. 5, then 5 multiplied by, let's say, 2. Then let's see the result of that. Here again, to call my function, it returns 55 because this is a string. It will repeat this string twice using this multiplication uh, operator to print this string twice. But that is not what I have intention in doing. I can just say okay, this is my variable, let me save it in num, and say okay, this num should hold the value 5. Then I will just say okay, let me call my num variable here. I save the file and I come down here again to run the program. It return 10. Here is because the num here is now an integer, but I can likely put that in quotes by saying, okay, I'm converting this num to be a string, and let me see the output here. It's return 55 again because now num is a string. But inside this my print function, I can actually do um, some computation by saying, okay, I don't want to accidentally print out string by multiplying the string by 2. I want to make sure that whatever I'm going to be multiplying by 2 will be an integer value. I can force that to happen by using the int function, then putting this in parentheses to use in multiplying whatever value is being passed into my num variable, convert it to an integer, then multiply it by 2. I save my file, I come down here, then 5 multiplied by 2 will return 10 once again. So we can use the return value of any function to perform any operation that we are trying to perform, in order to be very careful about the results we are going to be getting. That we'll look into that when we are looking at errors that we can come across in while writing code. We look at those kind of errors where you actually do something but the interpreter is not doing what you actually want, but what it actually seems to be imputed inside your code. So void function might display something on the screen or have some other effect. Let's say maybe by updating a variable, it may display something on the screen or have some other effect, but they don't have a return value. If you assign the result to a variable, you get a special value called none. Okay, let's see what will happen here. If I have my function, let's say I want to have another function here, another variable here called pi, then I say, okay, math.py, I want to work with math.py, then this math.py is returning um is returning a float value here, and saving it into pi variable. Math.py will return a float value, then I can just use the pi, then say, okay, the pi value I'm going to be multiplying it by 2. I save my file, then I'm coming down here to do some to output it on the screen. Here it's returned 6.2. But if I try to do that whenever I write a function that doesn't have any return value, yeah, it's possible because this math.py has a return value and I assign that into my pi function. But if I'm trying to do that with a function that doesn't have any return value, let us say if I have any function in func here, no, I don't have. Let us see this. I have a function called print lyrics, right? So it is in a function.py file. I can import that into my current function that I'm working with. I can say, okay, import a function. I want to import this file here as a module inside my program. I say import a function without the extension file extension name .py. Without that, I have imported this, so I can now use this a function. I can use any function that is being defined inside it. Here I'm having the print lyrics function, which does not have any return value but only print out some string to the screen. So I can just say, okay, this a function, I want to use it, I want to save it inside another variable. Let's say I have a variable here func, then I say, okay, I want to get a function, then the function is defined inside this function here, which is print lyrics. So I can say a function dot print lyrics, which is a dot notation. Here I'm calling a function dot print lyrics. It doesn't take any argument, so that should work fine. A function dot print lyrics, I'm calling it, then I want to output what I have in a print function here. So I'm going to say print out func, then save and come to this line to bring out the result of my code. Here it only return the objects of this function, because what I actually do here is just to call this function and by its name, which is going to be returning the object, and saving it inside a variable func, then outputting that func. So yeah, I can just do some little change by calling the function actually. I save it, then I come down here to run the code again. Then I can see what is being outputted to the screen. It's returned the string I am a lumberjack and this. So that is about so that is about this function here. It says inside this module, look for the function my lyrics with parentheses here, which means this is a function and not a variable. Take this my lyrics function is calling the my lyrics function on this line in particular, on line 8. So that is why it is returning the string that I have here, which is what is being returned by this. I'm a lumberjack, I sleep all night and I work all day. It return it on this line. Then here it's returning funk. I'm saying okay, print out funk, which is printing out that it is what? It has the value none because it is not having any return value, but it actually does something by printing out this line of text here without having any return value. So the return value for this kind of function is called none. And likewise, I can also have my own user defined function with a return value. So let's look at that. Let's say for instance that I don't have any module that I can use in getting the circumference of a circle, but I have something that is being defined in one of my code here, which is um in maths here. I have a function that is being used to calculate the circumference of a circle here by just passing in the radius. So here, instead of printing out the value, I can just say okay, return whatever value you have to the screen without printing it out. Return it. So for me to get any return value from a function, I use the return after the end of that function to return the value of whatever it has. I can put it in parentheses for um, just for better readability, to say okay, these things are together. Then compute whatever you have, such as 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by r. If I should try to run this function, nothing will be outputted to the screen, but it has a return value. So coming down here, I can have to call my I can call my program again by saying I want to call this file name that is called math.py. So I run this program, nothing seem to happen here because I'm not actually outputting anything to the screen. I'm only calling the program, which means this circumference with an argument 5 is only returning a value and not printing out the value. But I can work with that here if I have let me try to comment my code here. Then I move to the next line. So I can work with that here by importing the maths module that I work on myself. So it's a module that I define myself. I can say import maths. This is a module that I define myself. Then I go down again. I want to use a function in this maths module, which the function name is called circumference, which is used in getting the circumference of a circle. So here I can just go back into my code and say okay, a variable which is a circum of, let's say, 5. Then I say okay, use the maths module, get the function circum in it, but this function is having parameter, which the parameter will be the radius of the circle that you're trying to get the circumference, which I will be putting 5. Here circum 5 is getting the circumference of a circle whose radius is 5. So in this variable, the return value for a circle with radius 5 will be stored in this circum 5 variable. But if I'm having another function such as what I have earlier on, that is not returning any value in this function here, in this file here, this function is not returning any value, it will return none instead. So if I'm working with any other function that has a return value, such as my math function that has been edited to return a value instead of printing, then I can work with those value that is being returned. But first of all, like to try to output what I have in my circum5 variable. So by saving my file, I come down here to run my file, which is name. Here I'm having I'm a lumberjack. I'm okay. So this is the line that I actually want to work with, which is the printing of circum5, which is the value stored here. So yeah, I can just try to make sure that whatever I'm getting is from this print function by saying okay, whatever I'm getting is from this print function, which is, let's say, from print function. So this is from print function. I can just say add this, give a space, then I come down here, run the program again, then it return an error here because I cannot concatenate whatever I have. I cannot concatenate a string with a float. So what I will do is to convert whatever return value this is having into a string by using the string function, then closing this in a string by saying okay, whatever I have as my circumference 5, then we convert it to a string, then I concatenate these two strings together. So I first clear my screen, then I run the program again, which is now working. From print function, it returns this value that is being stored in the circum5. This is just an illustration to indicate that if I'm working with a function with return value, it will return that value, and that value can be stored in a variable and be used multiple times. But if I'm working with another function that doesn't have any return value, such as what I have here, the return value will be none instead. That is about function with return value. Thank you for staying with us. We'll meet in the next video where we look at errors that can be found in while programming.